Bat Look Cinema, the podcast.
You know what I hate? I hate whiners, you know? I hate people who just complain. I knew a guy in the joints once one time. Sat next to me, you know, he just used to yap about everything. He used to yap about the food and yap about the guards and yap about this and yap about that and yap all night long, fucking yap like a fucking 747. You know what I mean? Like an inch stuck right between your fucking ears. You can't get rid of it because he's right next to you. You know what I mean? My name is Zoe. It's spelled Z-O or Z to the O for those of you outside of the U.S. Welcome back, friends. This is the 174th episode of Backlook Cinema, the podcast, where we take a look back at the movies of yesteryear, especially the movies of the latter half of the last millennium. If you like what you're about to hear, then tell your family, tell your friends, and tell those four guys over there looking like they're getting together to watch that boxing match tonight about Backlook Cinema. Now, the movie that we're going to talk about tonight, I'm just now realizing that I've only seen it one time. Like, this is my second watch. I don't know. Maybe I watched it one time before. The only time I remember watching it is watching it in the movie theater. And that was a magical time. It was so nice. I think it was going to a Prince George's Community College at the time. And, I remember watching the trailer, being excited about the trailer. It had some of my favorite actors in it. It's like, yo, I gotta go check out this movie. And I was not disappointed. I was absolutely thrilled watching that movie. And now, all of these years later, I'm going to take a look back at it again, like we do on this show. So the movie that I'm probably watching the second time, the movie that I want to talk to you about tonight is called Judgement Night. So if you're not familiar with it, that's not unusual because I wanted to do this movie before, but it just took, it's just not as readily available now as it may have once was, like in earlier years. It's a little bit harder to find. And what I found out is that there is a reason for that, and we'll get to it. So let's start with the opening credits. Four friends, Frank, Mike, John, and Ray, are on their way to a boxing match to have their much-needed guys' night out. On their way to the arena, they get stuck in freeway traffic, so they take an exit to find their way on the surface streets. The good news is that there's no traffic where they're at, as it seems that this is an abandoned neighborhood. The bad news is that they're totally lost. In their wanderings, they accidentally hit someone, but this someone was shot. It was a kid who was on the run from some very bad dudes. The bad guys catch up with them and murders the kid in front of them. So now the bad guys have to get rid of the four witnesses. The four friends manage to get away from being killed on the spot, but the gangsters are in hot pursuit, and they will not give up until all four friends are dead. Judgement Night was released October 15th, 1993, produced by Largo Entertainment and JVC Entertainment Networks. It grossed over $12 million in the US and Canada on a reported budget of $21 million. Ew, that is such a failure. They spent $21 million in order to get a return of $12 million. That's not good. That's not good at all. That is a tragedy, especially for how much I like this movie. I had no idea that it was a box office bomb, but as I found out, there is a reason for that. If we adjust these totals for inflation, that would mean that the movie had grossed $26 million if it came out today, and the budget would have been $46 million. So only making half their money. But it is, or there is, I should say, a reason for that. So this movie was starring Emilio Estevez as Frank Wyatt. I always enjoyed Emilio Estevez. I think one of my favorite roles that he played was in Young Guns. So he's also played in other roles such as The Way, Bobby, The Public, The Mighty Ducks, the whole franchise, in fact, Free Jack, and as I mentioned, Young Guns, because I covered that in episode number 26. Up next, another one of my favorites, Cuba Gooding Jr. He plays Mike Peterson. And you may have seen him in Jerry Maguire, which I covered in episode 120 with Dan from Goodwill Podcasting. He was also in Radio, Selma, and The Butler. Denis Leary, another one of my favorites. Actually, I have to admit, I had not seen a lot of Denis Leary movies, but I used to watch his stand-up. I used to be very entertained by his stand-up. He is amazing. His line delivery is unmatched. It seems like he can talk a mile a minute with no problem at all. And he seems that he plays a certain type. He plays a person of authority a lot of times, or a person who talks really fast. So you may have seen him in The Thomas Crown Affair, The Ref, Ice Age, or you probably heard him in Ice Age, or Demolition Man. I covered that in episode 41, if you want to check that out. He was also in The Amazing Spider-Man, doing an amazing job. Up next is Stephen Dorff. He plays John Wyatt. You may have seen him in Blade. As a matter of fact, I think the only movie besides Judgment Night that I've ever seen Stephen Dorff in is Blade. I covered that in episode 103. And he is engrossed in a lot of indie projects, such as Felon. I think that's an indie movie. I'm not exactly sure. And there's another movie that I'm sure is an indie project because I've never heard of it, called Somewhere. Up next is Jeremy Piven. You may have seen him in he plays Ray Cochran. My bad. You may have seen him in Serendipity, Grosse Point Blank, or The Kingdom. Peter Green plays Sykes. He's been in Pulp Fiction, The Mask, and Blue Streak. And Peter Green, he's just got that kind of face. Like when he shows up in a film, you're like, yeah, I know that guy. A face that you may not be familiar with, because I certainly wasn't familiar with him. Eric Schrody. I think that's how you say it. S-C-H-R Scrody. Oh, okay. That's what it is. Eric Scrody. I should have practiced this before I started. His name is spelled S-C-H-R-O-D-Y. So I'm thinking S-C-H. So that's like school. So yeah, that's how we get that. But, you may know him by his more famous name, Everlast, from the House of Pain. He plays Rhodes. And as he is a musician, he doesn't do a whole lot of acting. So the only other theatrical credits that I saw for him was Lowball and Bang. Michael Wiseman plays Travis. You may have seen him in Predator 2 or Planet of the Apes from 2001. Now this is a very guy-focused film. There aren't a lot of women or prominent women in this movie. I'm pretty sure if they were to remake it today, the women would probably have more prominent roles. But in this case, it seems like they're all kind of shoved in the refrigerator, starting with Christine Harnos, who plays Linda Wyatt. And she plays the wife of Emilio Estevez's character. You see her at the beginning of the film, and that's it. Like even in like a film where there's a wife and like the hero is separated from his wife or his girlfriend or something like that, they normally show up at the end of the movie. Like in Die Hard. In Die Hard, you had the hero separated from his wife, but they showed his wife from time to time. But she really doesn't. But it's really like the beginning, some spots in the middle, and then the end of the movie. That the wife usually shows up at the end. But in this movie, you see Christine Harnos at the beginning of the movie, and you don't see her for the rest of the movie. And you may have seen her in Dazed and Confused or The Rescue. Up next is Galen Gorg, or it might be Galen George. I'm not exactly sure. Anyway, she plays Clarissa, and you may have seen her in RoboCop 2 or Point Break. And the woman that acted with her, Angela Alvarado, plays Rita. And you may have seen her in a movie called Showtime and another movie called Freedom Riders. And these two actors that I just mentioned, they're basically in one sequence with the four main characters, and then you don't really see them again after that particular sequence. And they could have did something with the movie where they join the guys or something like that, but that doesn't happen in this story. So this movie was directed by Stephen Hopkins. And when I saw the name, I was unfamiliar, but as it turns out, I have covered many of his movies on this podcast. And many of them I like, and some of them I just sort of liked. And like Lost in Space. I seen it. I sort of liked it. I've only seen it one time. Haven't seen it in a while. It's like, I think I mildly liked it. Like I think Lost in Space, if I watched it again, I hadn't seen it in a long time, but if I watched it again, I'll probably enjoy it better because I had much higher hopes. Like I had super high expectations for Lost in Space. And oh shoot, I forgot what year it came out. It came out in the early 90s. I think it was early 2000s. No, it could have been early 90s. I can't remember. I'm so sorry. I meant to write the year down by Lost in Space. But anyway, regardless of when it came out, it was one of the early movies that Mott LeBlanc did, during his or soon after his tenure on Friends. And that's what I mainly remember the movie for, was Matt LeBlanc. And then, of course, John Hurt was in the movie. Hopkins also directed A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Child. I may have seen that one, but I have no memory of it. No, as a matter of fact, I didn't see it. I think I tapped out of A Nightmare on Elm Street by around now Nightmare on Elm Street 4. I think that's if I saw that one. I'm not exactly sure. Predator 2, I did watch. Love that movie. The Dark Tower, I recently did a rewatch of The Dark Tower. And I remember the first time I watched the movie, I was really disappointed. But on the rewatch, I feel like I reevaluated how I feel about it. And I think I should say I like it a lot better because I kind of see what they were trying to do with in a sense, they had limited resources. And I enjoyed the movie much better on the second watch than their original watch. He also directed a movie called Race. And then there's Ghost in the Darkness, which many people held in high esteem. And then there's Blown Away, which I really like, also covered on the podcast. So, and then he directed many others. So that's another thing about this is like, he's a fairly good director. And this, like I said, I really enjoyed this movie. I feel like this is a fairly good movie. And so it's one of those things where until I read further about what went on with this movie as to why it turned out to be such a flop. Because this movie is not an expensive movie. Like $12 million, like nothing. So, actually $21 million. $21 million, like it's very little money. So it's amazing that it flopped. This movie was written by Lewis Collick and Jerry Cunningham. Collick has written such bangers as October Sky, Ladder 49, Charlie St. Cloud, Ghost of Mississippi, An Unlawful Entry. Of all of these, I think I've only seen Unlawful Entry, but I really liked it. It is, Unlawful Entry is a action thriller that I really enjoyed. The thriller aspect of it is a French Kiss. And I never got around to seeing Ghost of Mississippi, but I think I should get around to seeing that. And, I hear a lot of people talking about October Sky. Maybe I should check that out too. Cunningham is not so much a film writer. I think that he might do some treatments on scripts, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of film credits. The only feature film credit that I found is for The Last of the Finest. And he also has a credit for Hunter's Blood, but I believe it's because he wrote the novel and there's a film based on that novel. So that's it with the writers. The music is by Alan Silvestri, our friend, and I much admire his music because he made music for films like Captain America, The First Avenger, and Avengers Endgame, and pretty much the theme for the Avengers movies. And he also wrote Forrest Gump. He also composed music for The Walk and The Croods and Beowulf from 2007 and over 100 other movies. He's incredibly prolific. He's one of the star composers in the movie industry. So that's it for the opening credits. And as far as the announcements, please continue to check out backlookcinema.com/shop. See if there are anything in the shop that you would so desire. Obviously, there are t-shirts, but there are also cups and mugs and hoodies and other things. It's spring, so maybe you can get you something nice for the spring. Also, still working on Bazaar de Alonso. It's coming. I swears it. So that's it for the announcements. And now we're going to talk about our favorite parts. So, as I mentioned, this is the favorite parts. And I like to, at least in recent episodes, I want to see if I can tease out what the themes of the movies might be. And in this case, it's a pretty, I don't think they're really trying to have a larger message with this movie. They're really just trying to write an action thriller, and there's no real undercurrent or underlying theme. But if you kind of tease it out, I think it's just kind of the theme or the attachments that we have, the bonds of friendships, how we look out for each other, how we stand up for one another. You have these 4 friends. They're lifelong friends. They don't really say how long they've known each other, but you get the feeling that they've known each other for most of their life. They're approaching middle age. They're probably in their early 30s. And many of them, like 3 of them are not married. One is married, like Emilio Estevez's character is married. And in the beginning of the film, he has a conversation with his wife about going out with his friends. And she really wants him to have friends that are married and settled like they are themselves. And he wants to hang out with his childhood friends. So it's because he has that strong bond with them. And so this adventure that they're on kind of tests their bonds. It tests the bonds of friendship, tests how or if they can stand up for one another, like the suggestion of a friend. Like when you have a friend, you expect them to look out for you. You expect to look out for them. You expect them to help you when you need it, and you expect to help them when they need it. And so this movie asks those questions. It tests those bonds. Like how far will you go for a friend? What would you do in a trying situation? Where's a context and where you won't uphold your commitment to your friends? And those are protagonists. And as far as the antagonists, they're bonded not by friendship, but by, it's more like a business arrangement. These aren't really buddies. They're obligated by money. The thing that bonds them together is the money and the command structure that they have. And so their bonds are not as strong. And we kind of see that throughout the movie. In both cases, their bonds are tested. The bonds that your business bonds are tested for the antagonist, and your friendship bonds are tested when you're with your friends, and you see how they're tested and how they're frayed differently as the adventure carries on. And also you also get a sense of it's about making the right choices. There's one particular friend, he's constantly making the wrong choices, or he wants to make the wrong choices. So, and that friend is Ray. Ray is always going to do the wrong thing. Cause he doesn't want to deal with consequences. And, unfortunately, he kind of reminds me of me, because like I too am afraid of the consequences, but I also know that I have to do the right thing. And it is Frank who more often he basically pushes his friends to do the right thing, to make the right decision, to make the morally correct choice. And that's hard for a lot of us. And so I think that's kind of like one of the underlying themes is making the right choices. So I had it's one of those movies where I had a lot of favorite parts. There are a lot of key scenes and a lot of key set pieces in this movie that are just fantastic, that I absolutely enjoyed. So it's one of those movies like recent, and the last couple of movies that I talked about is like I had a hard time breaking it down, because I like to break it down to like 5 favorite parts, because otherwise I could just go on and just talk ad nauseum about what all of the favorite parts of the movie. And it's kind of hard to narrow it down. It's kind of hard to condense it into something concise and meaningful. And I think I kind of failed to do that for this movie. I was trying to write notes while I was watching the movie to prepare for the show. And it's like, there are so many things to touch upon, so many things that I noticed. So I'm going to talk about some of the things I noticed, going along the narrative. And then I will also talk about my favorite parts. I'm going to kind of blend these ideas together. I feel like I have to put some of my favorite parts into context, and I also want to talk about some of the things I noticed. Like, for example, these are some great friends. I like how in the beginning of the movie, they establish their friendships. You see their distinct personalities, their distinct characters, kind of like right off the bat. You have Frank, who's the family man. You learn that he's basically the moral center of the crew. And then you have Mike. He is I don't want to say that he's the crazy guy. Well, I feel like he is the most action oriented of the crew. He is like the jock of the crew. I don't know if he actually played football. He wears a football jacket, but I don't know if it's because he's a fan of football or because he actually played football. It's kind of hard to tease that out. It doesn't really go too much into his background. You don't really know what he's like before, but he's the most excitable person of the crew. And you have John. John is Frank's younger brother. John is the prototypical screw up. Always he's reckless. He gets into trouble. And in this movie, he's most tested. And then you have Ray, and Ray is he fashions himself as a wheeler dealer, the guy that can talk himself into or out of anything. And you kind of see that right off the bat with the 4 main characters, the 4 main protagonists established in the film. So it felt real in a sense, if I'm explaining that correctly. It felt like you knew these guys. It's like these are some people that you might know. Some of your friends are like these guys. Some of your family members are like these guys. There are familiar faces, or they feel like you might know them. So it feels like that's established right off the bat. So I really enjoyed that. Another note that I wanted to make is there was a point where, like, Ray gets this giant RV. It's somewhat unwieldy. And so instead of driving their regular cars, they're driving this huge RV, and they get stuck in traffic. And he does this reckless maneuver to get him off of the freeway and get him onto the surface street, the regular streets, to try to circumvent all the traffic that is, I don't know, I guess this must be around rush hour, because it's like bumper to bumper. And I think this takes place in Chicago. So they get off into this section of the city where it looks like it's deserted. It doesn't look like there's anybody there. And they're just driving. They don't know where they're going. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, this is before GPS. It's right around the time when MapQuest was probably available. But since they know where the stadium is, they're probably not going to try to use MapQuest. Because MapQuest is something you print out directions and it gives you the regular directions. So it would not have been useful. Like, I don't know if you could tell MapQuest to tell you how to get from point A to point B using, avoiding the highway. And this is something they kind of did off the cuff. It's not a way that they plan to go. And so they quickly get lost. And I'm like, when I'm lost in a deserted area and I don't have GPS, that is very scary. I was once lost in New York City one time, driving for hours and hours trying to figure out how to get off of the island, and it was not a fun time. It kind of reminds me of that. Another note that I wanted to make is, like, during this time, when they're lost in this somewhat deserted section of the city. Ray is driving around the RV, but he's also at the same time trying to help Mike look for this map, a map to help them, because it's not his RV. He kind of talked somebody into, he talked this dealership into giving him or letting him test drive or borrow the RV for free, because he claimed that he got these clients that he wanted to buy this RV for. And then, so both Ray, who is driving, and Mike, who is not driving, are looking in the glove compartment trying to find the map. And so Ray is not paying attention to where he's going, and they hear a thump. They think they hit somebody, and they hit Michael DeLorenzo. I mean, that's not his name in the movie. His movie is Kid. Oh, it's not even a name. It's just that that's his description. He's described as Kid or a kid, basically a young man. So if you don't know Michael DeLorenzo, I am familiar with him because he was one of the stars of a show that I used to watch called New York Undercover. I used to love that show. It was kind of like a hip hop cop drama. And he was one of the stars. And every time I see Michael DeLorenzo, I'm like, there he is. There's Michael DeLorenzo. So that's another note that I make when I watch this movie. Also, I love how as the movie progresses, the tension just keeps ratcheting up. This is an action thriller. And so the tension escalates like slowly but surely. Like first, they're when they're on their way to the stadium in the RV, they get stuck in traffic. So now you're stuck in traffic with this giant vehicle. You're trying to change lane with this giant vehicle, and people don't want to get you over. And then he gets into like a fender bender, and that's a little bit of an escalation. Because it's like, wow, this is a vehicle. It's not even his. He's borrowing it. He's not even renting it. He's borrowing it from the dealership. And he gets into a little fender bender with some dude that didn't want to let him over. So he's trying to force his way over, and the dude just rams into him. Just a little dent on the side of the RV. Everybody gets out of the car. There's a confrontation. That's another escalation of the tension. And then when they get off of the freeway and get into the surface streets, and they're kind of driving around trying to find their way back to the freeway, the place is deserted. There's nobody there. They don't know where they're at. That's another escalation. And then they hit somebody because Ray isn't paying attention. That's another escalation. And then they're kind of looking around actually after they hit, they didn't know they hit anybody. They felt a thump that very much felt like there was an impact somewhere. And Ray is always making the choice not to take responsibility. He's like, I didn't hit anything. I didn't feel that. He was like, and Frank was like, Ray, we hit somebody. We all felt it. and Ray is like, well, it's probably an animal. And then, everybody gets out except Ray. They're looking around trying to find who they might have hit. They don't see anybody at first, so it looks like the coast is clear. And then they find the guy that they hit. So escalated again. And then when they find the guy there, they're trying to help him out. Because at first they think he's dead, but he's very much alive. And then when they're trying to help him out, they realize that he's been shot. So that's another escalation. It's like the tension just keeps going up and up. And it's like, just, I love how the movie ratchets, I can't even say the word. Ratchets it. It escalates the tension. I love that. I'll use a different word. I'm Porky Pig over here trying to talk and I can't do it because I keep stuttering. Eventually, the bad guys catch up with him. As it turns out, the car actually, at one point, after they get the kid into the RV, and they're gonna look for help. So they start looking for help. They see a police car, so they try to chase down a police car, but they soon lose the police car. And then as they're driving around, trying to figure out how to get out of that area, they get hit by another car, and then they lose control. Or Ray, it's not Ray. It's at this point, it's Frank that's driving the RV because Ray is not trying to do the right thing. He's constantly making the wrong decisions. Like, cause Ray didn't want to help the kid. Ray didn't, cause he was like, nobody's going to know that we hit him if we just leave now. Ray didn't want to bring the kid onto the RV. And then when they told Ray to drive and try to find a hospital, Ray doesn't want to drive. So Frank takes over. Frank gets in the driver's seat. Frank starts driving, and then Frank gets hit by this car. Just comes out of nowhere and hits him. Frank loses control of the RV. It ends up crammed in this alley between two buildings. And then they kind of lose sight of the car. Car comes back. It's a bad guy. And then the kid is anxious and scared the whole time. It's like, they're going to kill us. They're going to kill us. And next thing you know, he was talking about, show up and they pull him out of the RV. And then, they go, they're talking to him, being menacing and everything. And the leader, Fallon, he's played by Denis Leary. It's like, you took my money. You're not supposed to take my money. And then the kid gives back the money, but it's like, Fallon was like, you ain't supposed to you're not supposed to steal from me. And I know you're trying to steal. This is what I hate. It's one of my rules. You're not supposed to steal my money. And then they shoot the kid. And they know they have these 4 witnesses they got to take care of. So they start walking towards the RV calmly because they're just going to calmly kill these 4 guys. The guys are stuck in the RV. They can't, the only way out are the doors on the side. And the RV is pinched. So these guys start walking towards them. So Mike, he picks up a fire extinguisher and he starts smashing the front window. He smashes enough where he can go and he can kick it out. So they start crawling out the front of the RV where the windshield was. And then Frank, having wherewithal to try to cover their escape, he finds a candle and some matches, lights up the candle, pours alcohol over the floor of the RV and sets the RV on fire, cover their escape. The bad guys start shooting, but they don't really have a target because flames are covering their escape. And for the most part, the bad guys can't shoot anyway. The only person who really can shoot is Fallon. But seeing as nobody can see, they use the fire to cover their escape. And to get out, they all manage to get out through the windshield where the windshield used to be, run away. The RV explodes because this is a movie. And and then it's on fire. So yeah, cars do sometimes explode when they get caught on fire. And that was one of my favorite parts, them able to get out of the RV. I love that little action sequence. I love that Frank had the wherewithal to cover his escape. And there is some notion that Frank used to get into some trouble. Maybe he was a troublemaker in his youth. Maybe he was like a little punk kid who used to go around messing with people. We don't know, but this is what Mike, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., this is what Mike is always insinuating, is like, you used to be the type of dude that wouldn't take no guff, right? And so Mike is kind of reminding Frank of what he used to be, but Frank is a family man now, and he don't live that life anymore. He don't do that no more. But now it seems like this escape, where they're trying to escape from these bad guys, that's going to have to bring out the old Frank in order to deal with this situation. 4 friends, they're running away. They're being chased by the bad guys at first in the car, and then they're able to lose the bad guys for a few minutes. The 4 friends end up in a train yard. They're trying to figure out which of these cars they can get in so they can hide. They find a car, they hide in a car. But then suddenly they're menaced by a bunch of bums because they thought they were alone in the car. But see, if they can get into the car, anybody can get into one of these railway cars. It looks like a cattle car because I saw like holes on the side. Is the whole car is like metal, but they just got these holes. So I imagine this is a cattle car. And then like in the back of the car is a group of bums that they discover is with them. So they wouldn't be a problem if they were, but the 4 friends are being chased, and then the bad guys kind of show up. Then Fallon is there, and he's menacing everybody. He's like, yeah, I know you're here. I'm going to find you. And he's banging on all the doors. Him and his gang is like the four of them. They're banging on various square-away cars to try to get them to come out or to reveal themselves and make them nervous that they'll scream out. And so the bums see this. The head bum or the lead bum senses the situation. It's like he wants to bargain with the four friends, so the bums can remain silent. Cause like, I could just, the main bum is I can just cry out. I can just shout out and then they'll find you. And Mike was like, or either Mike or Frank was like, well, if you say something, then you'll get shot too. They'll shoot you too. He's like, yeah, or they might be thankful. Right. So they start giving the bums money, like, what you call it? Ray gives one of the bums a watch, and then Frank, for some reason, gives his whole wallet to one of the bums. And it's like, without actually taking the money out, giving it to the bum, he gives the whole wallet. That's kind of a strange thing to do, but I can see how he's nervous. He's scared. He's encouraging everybody to give up their valuables so that the bums won't cry out and reveal their location. But the problem is, and this is actually one of my other favorite parts. The problem is that one of the bums does not actually keep up with the end of the bum agreement, because he's not all that right in the head. And he keeps talking about how we used to play football. And one of the things that happens is that, see, Mike is wearing as I said earlier, like a football jersey. Not a jersey. What do you call it? It's like a school Letterman jacket. And he's wearing this thing, and the bum that keeps talking about how he went to school is saying, you think you can just come in here and wear that jacket? And then he starts to scream, and that catches the attention of Fallon. Fallon and his gang, they go over to that, their cover has been blown. Fallon now knows exactly where the four friends are, because one of the bums was upset because Mike was wearing a sports jacket. So, cause they actually get to like a kind of a scuffle. So the bums run out of the car when the bad guys show up. So now it's just a group of people, and they don't know that, the bad guys just don't want to just start gunning down bums. They just want to kill the ones that saw them commit the murder. When you think about it, they might as well have, because now the bums are witnesses. But then again, who listens to bums, I guess? So anyways, they all start, the bums and the four friends, they basically try to lose themselves in the crowd. But Fallon sees one of the bums wearing a sports jacket. And either he saw or he has an intuition that the sports jacket belongs to one of the guys that they saw. So he takes careful aim. He shoots and kills the guy with the sports jacket. They go over to him. Turns out it's not who he thought it was. It's not one of the guys that saw him. It's one of the bums. Because apparently, in all that commotion, when the bum who was not right in the head was kind of screaming out about being a football player, I think he kept talking about that he was a college football player. So in that commotion, Mike gave up his jacket to that bum. So the bum was wearing it when he got killed, and it actually covered Mike and his other friends' escape. So I like that part. That was great. Well, I like the whole, cause I think what the parts that I'm attracted to are the parts where it's like the tension really started to get to me. Like it was like, oh my God, these guys are going to get killed. It's those types of moments. Like when the tension is so intense, those are the moments that I'm pointing out. But there is another part that is not a tension-filled moment. That is another one of my favorite parts. So it's this part where the four friends, they end up in a neighborhood. Like they finally find like an actual neighborhood where people live at. Cause they've been going around this, one area of the city it seems to be totally abandoned. And they finally end up in an area where there are at least some people live. This is apparently a bad neighborhood. That's the vibe it gets off. This is not the type of neighborhood where someone like Ray lives. Like Ray is more, I mean, they're all kind of well off, like upper middle class, if not middle class income. Ray, I suspect, is like upper middle class. Like he's almost wealthy, right? And so they end up and it's really an uncomfortable situation for all of them. So they go into, they find their way into one of the buildings to look for help. And then the bad guys, like, they end up in that same neighborhood, and it feel like Fallon has like a preternatural, like predator instinct. Like he's almost like an expert tracker. It's like they don't show him doing like the typical expert tracker thing. He just have a feeling for where people go, I guess. So they end up in the same neighborhood, but this neighborhood is a territory of a local, street kids, right? There's this gang that shows up and challenges them. It's like, what are you doing in this neighborhood? They didn't challenge the four friends, but they challenge Fallon and his crew. And I think the reason is like when the four friends went to one of the buildings, it was only one kid there. That one kid must have went and told his gang buddies, and then the gang buddies set out and they're going to find the four friends. But instead they run into the gangsters. And so they challenge the gangsters, like, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this neighborhood? You don't belong here. And there's a little bit back and forth, but these are kind of like Fallon's people. Not that they are in the same neighborhood or stuff like that. They don't live together, but it's like they're both criminals. He sees a like mind. He recognizes like, and that's what Fallon recognizes. He recognizes a fellow gangster, I guess. So he tries to get he's like, there's no need for us to get into a gunfight. We just looking for these guys that stole money from you. Like, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to protect your turf. I get that. We just want to get these guys. They took something from me, and I don't, and I don't stand for that. And if you help me out, I'll give you some money. And the kid was like, man, I'll take your money. Now, I love this line. This is one of my favorite lines in the movie. That's when Fallon says, you can't take my money, but you can take my money, right? So basically what Fallon was saying is like, you, if you try to take this money, you're going to lose, but you can just accept this money and tell me what I need to know. So the gang leader wisely accepts the money and rats on the four friends, because, those four guys ain't nothing to him. It's like, they're just, and his gang is a little bit richer. And then there was a part, where the gang leader was like, man, it's got blood on it. And Fallon says, you know, money that didn't, right? Cause the money actually is filled with the blood of the kid that they had killed. So there's another part I wanted to point out. Not a favorite part, but it could be. So this is a part where the four friends actually were able to find someone to help them out. It took a while, but they were able to find someone to let them into their apartment so they can basically hide out and call the police. They're trying to call the police. They call the police, but it's like one of the women says, they're in the apartment for a while, and one of the women says, you'll die of old age before the police show up here, because once again, it is a bad neighborhood. So it's like two women and their baby. And, they might be sisters or lovers. It's not really clear. Not important. The only thing that is important is that even though they help the guys, they don't want the guys staying there, because, if there's trouble coming after the guys and they know the guys are being followed, then they don't want that trouble to them. So, when they realize that the guys are in the building and they're being hunted, the women are like, get the fuck out of my house, right? Because they're trying to get him out. And so Ray, as I said, who's always making the wrong decision, this is his absolute breaking point. He's pretty much done at this point. Ray the whole time had a gun. You saw, it's almost a Chekhov gun, but not really. Like, it's a gun in an action movie. You know it's going to get used. So Ray had revealed the gun in the first act of the movie where he showed, it was in the RV, because you never know when some crazy nut's going to show up. You got to have a gun to protect yourself. So it's Ray's gun. And then before they left, before they made their great escape, he was able to grab the gun before they left. So now in this moment, this is when Ray chooses to pull out his gun and points it at his friends. He says, we're not leaving this place. We're going to stay here. We're not leaving. And then that's when, Frank reaches out. It's like, this is crazy. We can't do this. These people put their necks out for us. They let us in their apartment and they let us call the police. We can't do this to them. We can't do this to them. And he's able to talk Ray down. He gets the pistol from him. And then they head out. And the ladies tell them how they can go under the roof. And they said there was a way that they can go from one rooftop to the next. Kids do all the time. So and then in the meantime, the bad guys are breaking down doors, threatening people, looking for these 4 guys that are witnesses, which is kind of weird. Now, admittedly, this is kind of a plot hole, because it's like if you're hunting down people because you don't want witnesses, you don't want to threaten other people in this pursuit. Now you got whole families that are witnesses that know that you did a thing, and so you're committing more crimes to stop somebody from ratting on you for a different crime. It doesn't really add up. But in the movie's defense, Fallon is a sociopath. He's kind of crazy. He doesn't really think straight. And the other thing is that they're in a poor neighborhood. They don't think that the police is going to pay attention to these people anyway. I think I forgot to mention also that after Fallon shot that bum, the bum had Frank's wallet on him. So when they're in the apartment, Fallon is calling out Frank's name because he got his name, his address, he got pictures. He's taunting Frank about his family and constantly calling out either Frank or Francis because his proper name is Francis and Frank is just his nickname. So I just mentioned that to point out there are 2 things that are wrong with Fallon. And I don't really consider it the movie's failing. I think that this is the thing about Fallon. I think is that his personality is that he's, other than being a sociopath, it seems like he might be neurodivergent. He may have obsessive compulsive disorder because he has Frank's wallet. He has Frank's ID. He knows Frank's full name. He's got Frank's full address. He's got pictures of where Frank lives. Fallon knows who Frank's wife, well, not who Frank's wife is, but what his wife looks like. So, he can go to the address. He can see that he's got the right person in the right address, and he doesn't have to chase Frank anymore. At this point, he could just stop and go to Frank's house. He has a car. He knows exactly where Frank lives. That's what he should have done. Like as soon as he got to, the train station. This would have happened in any other movie. When you get the ID, you just go to the victim's house and just wait there for them to come home. But because Fallon is a sociopath and he's obsessive compulsive, that's not where his mind goes. He's obsessed with actually capturing Frank that night, and he's basically breaking all the rules of crimedom in order to get Frank. So that is kind of how I see this movie. And it never occurred to me when I watched the movie the first time that that's what Fallon could have did. But watching it down, it's absolutely Fallon could have just went over to Frank's house and the movie would have been a completely different movie. So anyway, and back to the movie. I'm coming up to, I guess, my last favorite part, and then I just gotta, I've got 2 more. I'm going to cheat. It's going to be more than 5. So, another one of my favorite parts, because this is the fourth one, I think. I'm coming up on how I'm going to describe it. So this is the part where they're on the roof. They have to, they see, because they're on the upper part of the roof. It's like there's an upper part, and then there's a kind of a lower part of the roof that's like a floor below that kind of sticks out. In the upper part of the roof, they look down to the lower part, and they can see that there's a ladder that extends from one building to the next, like just a regular like ladder that you would use to lean on the side of your house to climb up to fix a roof panel or something, or to clean your gutters, like one of those type of ladders. Like the ladder is stretched all the way across. It's got a little bit of wood to kind of reinforce the joint, like when you slide up the ladder all the way. The place where the two ladders is basically two ladders when you got, I don't know what you call it, the sliding ladder. So, so the place where the sliding ladder is fully extended, in the middle of the ladder, they got some boards to reinforce the area where the two ladders meet. So they see that, so they know that's where they gotta go. But they're grown men, they're not kids. But that's a kid's pathway. That's not a grown man pathway. But they try not to get dead, so that's what they try to do. So first they gotta get down to the lower part of the roof, the lower roof. That's the floor down. The three of the men do it a little bit easier. So it's like Mike, John, and they go down pretty easy. And now you got Frank and Ray. Ray is a little bit chubby. He's the only one that's not in as great physical condition. He's probably a little bit older than the rest of the guys. And so after Frank goes down, Frank is trying to encourage Ray to come down. And Ray was like, I can't do it. It's like, Ray, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. There's a pipe right there. Climb down that sewage pipe, and then we can get you down there. So Ray kind of shimmies down the sewage pipe, having a really hard time. And finally they get him down. So they see the ladder. And so now they gotta crawl across this ladder. And so Mike goes first. He's nervous. He has a hard time because it's a long way down between the buildings, but he makes it across to the next building. And then John goes, and Ray is kind of looking at him, and already he didn't want to climb down to the lower part of the roof. He almost gave up right then and there, but he didn't. He stuck with the guys. And then after John gets across, now you have Frank and Ray. And Frank is like, all right, go across. And Frank is wise. Frank knows that if he doesn't get Ray to cross this ladder, Ray is not going to cross this ladder. And Ray kept saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. What, you don't trust me? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And Frank is like, come on, let's get across. It's like, and Frank, it's like, he can't really get Frank really can't get Ray to get across this ladder. So Frank basically gives up. So he's going to trust Ray to follow him. So Frank gets on the ladder, starts crawling across from one building to the next. And then there's at this point, bad guys show up. And then, they're going to start shooting. Well, actually, they show up. They don't really get a shot off first. I don't know. I can't remember. I know they show up. And then Mike sees them. At this point, I can't remember how. Oh, yeah. Frank had at some point gave the gun to Mike. So Mike has Ray's gun. He sees the bad guys. He takes a couple of shots off the bad guys. The bad guys find cover. So he can cover Frank while Frank is crossing the bridge, keep the bad guys kind of at bay with that one gun that he has. And then at the same time, or around the same time, the part of the ladder where this ladder bridge, where it's the weakest, where they have the piece of wood, that breaks and the ladder caves a little bit. Because remember, it's two ladders, the ladder that you slide. So at the point where the two ladders are fully extended, when Frank's weight hit that part, the ladder bends. And now he's in peril. and now he desperately has to get across. Some more bullets fly. Frank gets across. And so he's safe. But now you got a ladder that's kind of bent in the middle. And now Ray definitely does not want to take this ladder. And as soon as Ray gets Ray does not want to take this ladder. Ray does not want to take this ladder now that it's bent in the middle. So as soon as Frank gets across, he tosses the ladder between the two buildings. Like he shoves the ladder out of the way. The ladder falls to the ground. He says, I'm going to negotiate with these guys. I'm going to talk to these guys. See, I'm Ray, the Razor. I can do this. I can talk to these guys. So the guys kind of go in hiding on the other building, and they kind of watch Ray trying to talk his way out of being killed. And he's trying to negotiate. He's trying to offer them $100 million, trying to offer them $200 million. And you know, it almost seems like the bad guys are going to capitulate when, you know, Ray offers them like $200 million, and it doesn't. It's just like, it doesn't work. And Fallon knocks Ray off of the building. He falls to his death. Mike gets upset. He starts just firing off rounds. One of the bad guys get hit. I'm not sure if he gets killed right then and there, but he definitely gets hit. And then the three remaining friends get away. So yeah, I think that whole sequence, that's one of my favorite parts, but especially the part where they're crossing the ladder, and that whole moment is like filled with tension. And it's like with Frank trying to convince Ray to cross this dangerous ladder bridge so that the bad guys don't come down and murder all of them. That was a key moment in this movie, and I really enjoyed that. So this being essentially a chase movie, goes from scene to scene, goes in different situations with our protagonists running. They're being chased by the bad guys. At one point, they end up in a sewer, and Mike is, you know, he has a gun. He's feeling himself. He thinks that they should stop running and start, because they're not cornered exactly, but they're in a place where they're kind of afraid to move in the sewer, and they're being chased in the sewer. So, because they don't know, because even they're lost in the sewer and they don't know where the bad guys are. Like, they could start running around and run into one of the bad guys. There are 3 bad guys remaining, I believe. I think, did Mike kill that one? I'm not sure. I think maybe he did not. I think he just got hit, or he got scared and he didn't kill him. So there are 4 bad guys chasing the 3 protagonists in the sewer. So they're afraid to run around. So they decide to make their stand in this area of the sewer. And when I mentioned that, so one of the themes I had mentioned is about like making choices, like, and you have one friend being Ray making all the bad choices, and one friend, Frank, making all the good choices. And he basically assumes command of the group. He doesn't, and to the point where Mike calls him boss, and Frank doesn't like Mike calling him boss, but he has essentially assumed the role of leader of this group. So, and I think he's able to assume leadership because he's always making the morally correct choice, or at least trying to. Like, so the choice of whether to leave the kid that was shot, or the kid that they hit and at the same time was shot, the choice of leaving him behind and pretending that they didn't see him, or the choice of trying to help the kid, or the choice of staying with these, hidden in the apartment where they would have getting these women in trouble, or leaving the apartment so that hopefully the women can stay safe. These type of moral decisions. And then the other thing is, how, like, being a dependable friend, I guess, like the bonds of friendship, your obligations about being a friend. So it's in this sewer part where, they all agree to kind of look out for each other. And then there's a bad guy. The bad guy is sneaking up on Mike. Cause what happens is that they're in an area where there are multiple entrances and exits, and they think they got all of these entry and exit points, like watched or closed off, but they kind of missed one. So there is, one of the bad guys, I want to say it's Sykes. So Sykes emerges into this chamber in the sewer and he basically has a clear shot of Ray. So as soon as he sees Ray is probably like 10 or 15 feet away. He could have shot him right there. He has a big enough gun. It's like it wouldn't take much to kill Ray, but instead of, not Ray, but kill Mike. But instead of killing Mike from a distance, because, let's face it, the giant 6-shooter that he was holding is essentially a ranged weapon. So Sykes, one of the bad guys, starts sneaking up on Mike. And because Mike is intently watching one of the entrances with, and he has a pipe. Everybody has pipes now because the gun that he had, he basically shot all the bullets out of. So it's no longer any good. So everybody has pipes or a piece of wood. So Sykes starts sneaking up on Mike. But John sees this. He sees that Mike is being stalked. And he tries to warn Mike without letting the bad guys know. He's trying to stage whisper to Mike, but he's far enough away where if he's too loud, the bad guy's going to hear it too or whatever. And he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. So it's at this point that Mike should, or not Mike, but John should attack Sykes, the bad guy, from behind. It's like he's obligated to do it because he's supposed to be watching Mike's back. But he's too afraid. He doesn't do anything. And just as Sykes gets right behind Mike and he raises his arm and he points the 6-shooter right at the back of Mike's head, in comes Frank just in time. They slam him to the wall. They're able to knock the gun out of his hand. Mike is able to get the gun, and they basically have Sykes dead to right. It's like, and Sykes is like, "Oh, what are you gonna do? You gonna shoot me? Have you ever shot anybody before?" So basically, he feels like he's dealing with men that just don't have the what we used to call the intestinal fortitude to do something as heinous as kill somebody with a gun. So he's like, we're gonna kill you just like we killed your friend Ray. And at that point, Mike loses it and just shoots the guy, right? It was a knee-jerk reaction from Mike. And at this point, Mike feels incredibly empowered. Now he wants to fight everybody. He wants to shoot everybody. Not his friends, of course, but like all the bad guys. He took out one bad guy. He can kill all of the bad guys now. I think that's his rationale. But, Frank is able to convince Mike, now is not the time to go hunting for bad guys. Now is the time to try to get out of here and find safety. So there's this other part. I did, my little monologue at the beginning, and that monologue was from the part where the time when, Fallon ends up in the same chamber. He probably heard the gunshot. So it ends up in the chamber where Sykes was killed. So Fallon has his remaining henchmen with him. So one of them is Rhodes and the other is Travis. So, Travis is he likes to complain. That's why in the monologue he was talking, Fallon was talking about, he hates people who complain, yap, yap, yap. That's what he says. He hates people, but he didn't say it right. What prompted that monologue was when Sykes was complaining the whole time. It was like, why are we chasing them through here? I didn't sign up for this. They're probably gone. We should get out. We should leave. And, not Sykes, but I meant, Travis. Travis is saying that we need to, he's the complainer. So Travis is like, we shouldn't be down here. I didn't sign up for this. This is not what we're supposed to be doing. And Travis doesn't have the wherewithal to tell Fallon that, you have the address. Why don't we just go to the address? This looks like something that Travis would bring up, but Travis does not bring this up. Instead, Travis is like just complaining about the situation that they're in. And that's when Fallon, pops him in the head and then holds him in the water, because in the part of the sewer they're at, they're standing in like almost knee deep in water, and then holds him underwater. And then as he's holding Travis underwater, he's giving a speech about how he hates people who complain. And by the end of the speech, Travis is dead. I did not list that as my favorite part, but I know that's somebody's favorite part. Fallon holds Travis underwater for a long time. And then at some point, Rhodes, played by Everlast, was like, I think he's good. I think you did it. I think he's dead. Right? I don't think he's going to move anymore. I think you're done. I almost didn't realize it. So now it's just the two of them. So one guy gets killed by Mike. The other guy, he kills himself because the guy was complaining. And so now it's just Fallon and Rose. And this is what I meant, that Fallon he's not the brightest guy. He's kind of a psychopath. You know, this is the type of thing that I guess a psychopath would do. There's another part, and this gets to it's not really a favorite part, but it's a favorite line. And I thought about using this as the beginning monologue, but I didn't, but I'll do it. I'll do it here now. You get 2 monologues this episode. Now, it's more of a dialogue, but I kind of scraped out because it's basically a conversation between Frank and Mike. So I just have Frank's part, but it's a line that you hear in the trailer. It's a line that is so impacting me that's the strongest memory I have of this movie is this line that's delivered by, or this little speech that's delivered by Emilio Estevez. It's like, this is the thing that I think of every time I watch this movie. So what happens is that they get out of the sewer. They start walking around. This is a less abandoned area. There's actually a bus that's going through. They try to catch the bus. It's like they're very far away from the bus. So they try to run to the bus and they try to catch the bus, but the buses pull off. Now they're running beside the bus, trying to catch the attention of the bus driver. But the bus driver knows what neighborhood she's in. She's not trying to stop for people that's chasing after her. So she speeds up the bus. She takes off. And Mike is super upset that the bus driver didn't stop for them because there are a bunch of guys chasing after the bus after the bus has already left the bus stop. And, you know, he obviously he does not see the situation from the bus driver's perspective. So he's super upset and he takes a shot at the bus and it's like, Frank is like, are you crazy? What are you doing? That's, you know, you're going to call attention to us. You need to stop before you get somebody killed. And then that's when, you know, Mike is still upset. He's upset with Frank specifically because Frank is not acting like the type of person that Frank used to be. Like throughout most of the movie, it's like he's kind of insinuating how, I guess, gangster or tough or how much of a badass Frank used to be. And now that he's a married family man, he's not that person anymore. So he's mad at Frank for having basically a new life as much as being mad at Frank for stopping him from shooting the gun. So that's when, Mike was like, you know, you used to have bigger balls than all of us. Frank responds, is that what you think this is about? Balls? What about using your goddamn brain? What are you trying to prove, Mike? That you can get us all killed? Because that's exactly what you're going to do. I got a wife and a little girl, and I will get back to them tonight. You want to go out there like you're some kind of goddamn hero? Then you do it alone. I love that little spiel by Frank. I love that passion that he carries in his voice. I love that speech. Well, not that whole speech, but the part where he says, I have a wife and a little girl and I will get back to them tonight. That's what I remember specifically, but I like the whole package of this message. So the friends go along. They, find their way into some kind of department store. They kind of break the windows in order to cause an alarm that draws attention to the guards. And they did all that to try to attract the attention, you know, so they can get to the police. You know, they broke the law in order to attract the police so they can tell the police about the situation that they're in. It doesn't go exactly as planned. And, the bad guys, continue to find them, right? Except at least this time it's a little bit more obvious because, they're in a building where they set the alarm off. But, somehow, like I said, Fallon has this almost supernatural ability to track down the people he's after. So he's able to track them down because the friends lose him in the sewer, and they're on the surface street. They could be anywhere in that part of the city, and this is this is more of a commercial district that they're at. So they could be anywhere, but still, Fallon is able to zero in on where his quarry is and is able to track them down. A lot of fighting and shooting ensues. In that fighting, Mike gets shot. He gets shot by Rhodes, but it's like they shoot each other at the same time. So even though Mike gets hit, Rhodes is killed. There's a bunch. Oh, Mike gets a gun again because they're arrested by armed security guards. Well, they're apprehended by armed security guards after they set off the alarm. But the security guards don't quite handcuff them yet. You know, they're still doing the shut up, wait here for the police, and you know, shut up you. We don't want to hear what you have to say. We don't care. You're a thief or whatever. It's like, so while the security men are going through the motions of arresting them, like, so before they, you know, are able to handcuff anyone, that's when Rhodes show up, and Rhodes, you know, he starts shooting when a security guard gets killed. And then that's when Mike manages to get a gun. Rhodes and Mike, they shoot each other. Rhodes is killed. Mike is just, he has a gut shot. Friends are scrambling around trying to find hiding or trying to help each other. John tries to redeem himself with Mike. When Mike is hit, he scrambles down, he grabs Mike and pulls him out of, or to a safer location, safer cover. And grabbing Mike, he himself gets shot in the leg. They manage to scramble. And then Frank helps them find them a place to hide. And then Fallon is basically kind of lost. He's in the store searching for them. This is at night, so the store is closed. And then there's a huge action sequence where Frank and Fallon, they finally fight face to face. And it's a great closing sequence. It's a great fight choreography. It's more like a stunt set piece than actual fighting choreography, but it's nice. I like the way that had all worked out. It's very thrilling. But one of the things that I kind of like, it's almost like audience participation. This is where Fallon likes to taunt the people that he's hunting, right? So at one point, he's principally talking to Frank, and he's like, I'm going to kill your two pussy friends, and I'm going to kill you too. All right. And, but you know, he says this, but I'm thinking, son, his friends killed your friends. Like, you killed one of your friends, but his friends killed everybody. Because, like, Frank hasn't killed anybody. Like, Mike does most of the killing. He killed Sykes in the sewer, and he killed Rhodes. So, you know, Fallon is all boisterous about how he's going to kill people, but he's losing. It's just him left. It's like, it's three friends and just you. And among Fallon's crew, Fallon is the only one that knows how to shoot, because there's a lot of gunfire going around, and everybody's missing apparently. And it's only when Fallon shoots that Fallon actually hits people. But there was one time when, like, Rhodes, like I said, Rhodes and Mike's, they shot each other, but they weren't that far away from it. They were mere feet from each other when they shot each other. It's like they were at a distance that, you know, you couldn't miss. But every other time, it's like they might as well be throwing bullets downrange, because that's how good they were at shooting. So the fight between Frank and Fallon was great. The fight ends when Frank is able to knock Fallon off of the upper floor. They're on some kind of balcony, and Fallon falls through. He falls down like 3 or 4 floors and, he falls to his death. And then, the police shows up and they're able to explain the situation as much as they can before the closing credits. Like, cause that's where the movie ends. And, I found this movie to be satisfying. Like, I enjoyed it as much as I did the first time I watched it. As I said, they didn't have that moment at the end where the wife shows up and, gives Frank a hug. Frank is the only one with the family. So she was, only his wife will show up. But at the same time, I feel that, she wouldn't know where he was anyway. But in a different movie, she would have been there at the end. The slight flaws that I have, or at least I can easily overlook the flaws that might be perceived in this movie. As I said, I really enjoyed it. So that's it for our favorite parts. I wonder what your favorite parts are. Why don't you drop a line and let me know? You know the email address, fanmail@backlookcinema.com. So let's go and take a check out or take a look at why don't you have a listen to the top 10 trivia? The top 10 trivia, the trivia top 10, as you know, provided by IMDb. There was a little bit of contradiction as I was doing this research for IMDb, but I think I found them. I think I was able to fix some of them. Hopefully this will all be truthful and good for your knowledge. And there are some surprising things that happen in this movie or during the making of this movie. For example, according to Variety, Emilio Estevez was far down the list of actors in consideration for the role of Frank Wyatt. The trade paper story explained that the studio's desperation to quickly cast the lead role led to Estevez taking a much higher than expected payday. At the time the studio approached Estevez, they were at a point where the film either needed to go into production or cancel the project. Estevez asked for and got $4 million. That's a huge chunk of the budget. Remember, the budget for this movie was $21 million. So that's like a quarter of the movie's budget went directly to Estevez. Is it a quarter? Hold on. Almost a quarter. Maybe a fifth. I don't do math. Anyway, next one. According to Hopkins, he wanted John Travolta in the lead role and Kevin Spacey as the main villain role. Other actors, including Ray Liotta, Tom Cruise, Samuel L. Jackson, and Christian Slater, were either offered or had turned down the roles in the film. That would have been interesting to have either one of those actors. Like, I think that if this had Tom Cruise in it, it would not have crashed as much as it did. It would have at least made his money back. I mean, I think it's better than that. I think it would have made a tidy profit because Tom Cruise is definitely a huge draw. And at the time, so was Ray Liotta and Samuel L. Jackson. Like, as much as I like Emilio Estevez, I think these have, except for with the exception of Christian Slater, I think that Ray Liotta, Tom Cruise, and Samuel L. Jackson have a bigger drawing power than maybe Emilio Estevez. But at this time, I was really into, like, he was in a lot of movies, and I really enjoyed him in some of the movies that I saw. So it's kind of hard to say. During the filming of the rooftop confrontation between Fallon and Ray, the cast and crew were stunned by the sound of a random, unexpected gunshot. The crew ran downstairs to find a 16-year-old kid with his head blown off by another youth of the same age as part of a gang initiation murder. The army was brought in to secure the area the next day, and production was moved elsewhere. Now that is amazing. That is crazy. Imagine filming a scene for your movie and you're filming a crime movie and an actual crime takes place. That's nuts. And they apparently were in a bad neighborhood because I expect that these are the type of things that happen in bad neighborhoods. But I've never heard of a gang initiated murder. But goodness gracious, I guess this is the type of thing that happens. The other thing I'm struggling with is why the army was brought in to secure the area. Because typically the army does not secure crime scenes unless it's happening on a military base or some kind of military territory. But I could not find, and I guess admittedly, I didn't do a whole lot of digging, but I hope that like light digging would dig up why the army was involved in, and I couldn't figure out why. It doesn't seem to be a lot of easily defined reports on this particular incident. And speaking of shootings, because this film just can't catch a break, and this will lead to why the movie didn't make as much money as it might have. So during the opening weekend, there was a shooting at a screening in a Bronx theater, and local media blamed the movie itself for the incident. In response, it was quickly pulled from distribution and ran for only 2 weeks. This led to its failure at the box office and eventual cult status. Now that what explains why it bombed, because I don't think that this movie deserves that moniker. It's like it feels like a better movie, and then especially only to make $12 million when its budget was 21. Like it should have at least made its money back, but like it should have at least made something around $40 million. But it didn't, because it was pulled from theaters in the second week. So and I think that because it didn't like meet its budget in the first 2 weeks, the studio probably thought the movie was going to bomb anyway. And so they weren't, like a similar incident happened with one of the Batman movies. I think it was, Batman. What was the second Batman that Christopher Nolan did? I think, there was a shooting in the theater. There was a mass shooting, as a matter of fact, in that theater. And, but they weren't going to pull that Batman movie out of theaters. It was just going to be a tragedy that happened. And people were comfortable with not blaming the movie for the gunfight or for the mass shooting, the same way they blamed Judgment Night for that shooting in the Bronx. But that's just crazy. That's just, the movie was just surrounded by bad luck. Up next, Universal was so taken aback by the bleak tone of the dailies shot in Chicago that they thought the crew were using a matte painting. So, nope, they weren't using a matte painting. That's what Chicago looks at night. It's like, you might not be able to see it from your ivory towers, but when you get down to street level, that's what the real deal looks like. During the scene where Frank is attempting to catch up to the police car, the RV passes by Patty's Pub from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which isn't located in Chicago or Philadelphia, but in Los Angeles. So that's a neat little, and you really even can't call it an Easter egg, because I'm pretty sure this movie came out way before It's Always Sunny. Screenwriter Kevin Jarre was actually the one who wrote the first spec script for the movie under its original title, Escape, sometime around 1989 or earlier, which was based on a story idea by Richard D. Lello. The script was bought by Lawrence Gordon, who produced films like Predator and Die Hard in January of 1990. But later, his script was sold to other studios, and by the time the movie was going to be made, Jarre's original script was drastically changed by many other writers, to the point where only Lewis Collick and Jarre Cunningham, two of the writers who were working on the rewrites, got the writing and story credit. According to fans of Kevin Jarre, who read his original script, not a single word from it stayed in the final film, and the script was a lot darker and more violent than the film. Same thing happened to Jarre's original scripts for the films like Rambo First Blood Part 2 and The Devil's Own. Up next, a lot of the, quote, funny, end quote, lines of dialogue said by characters in the film were added, and later, after the studio thought the movie was way too serious and humorless. This is also another reason why the original, more horror movie-like atmosphere score was replaced with a typical action score, because they wanted the film to be and feel more exciting. But I actually thought that, the lines to me weren't necessarily funny as they were humorous. Like, you know, they put a smile on your face, but they're not going to make you laugh out loud. Up next, some of the background music during the chase scene immediately following the escape from the boxcar is very similar to the score in Predator from 1987. Both films had the music composed by Alan Silvestri. The director, Stephen Hopkins, also directed Predator 2, and he wanted the score to sound like the one Silvestri composed for that film, which is why he rejected Silvestri's original electronic score. And the last bit of trivia. At the scene on the roof of the projects building, Eric Scrody, aka Everlast from the House of Pain, the Irish, is in the house. As you can tell, he's a former Irish hip-hop group singer from the House of Pain. He can be seen wearing a ring with a shamrock symbol, because it's almost pointing. See, it's not only does he look like the guy from the House of Pain, but he's wearing a shamrock ring. I guess that's the message or whatever. Interestingly enough, even though I enjoy Jumping Around, I think that's the only House of Pain song I can identify. I had no clue what the members of House of Pain look like. I mean, I watched the video, but it's like the memory isn't sticky enough. So I didn't recognize Eric Scrody or Everlast. I didn't know that, you know, this was actually a member of a rock band. I had no idea. So, you know, maybe it should have been a clue, because his acting was a little bit off, but it wasn't so much that it was distracting. But, it wasn't. Only now, decades later, am I realizing that this is, it's Everlast playing in the movie. So that's it for the trivia, and let's go and see what the critics thought. The critics. Well, the critics weren't overly thrilled with this movie. They have it at 38% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience liked it slightly better at 54%. On Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb reviews, they have it at a 6.6 out of 10. So, I think this is another reason why, the studio kind of pulled this out of theaters, after the shooting, because it wasn't really making a whole bunch of money anyway. Like, after 2 weeks, it only made $12 million, and other things that the critics weren't particularly kind to it. So Malcolm Johnson from the Hartford Courant wrote, Hopkins displays a certain artistry, even in a film with little to say about anything other than warning against unfamiliar detours. And, you know, maybe that's definitely one of the things, one of the things he might be trying to say, but also I think there are strong messages about making a more moral decision. And I think there's a sort of reward for the guys that followed Frank's direction, making the moral decision. They survived. And the one guy who were the guy that was constantly making the wrong decision or wanting to make the wrong decision or lean towards making the wrong decision, that guy got murdered. So, I mean, he might have died anyway. Like, he probably would have died crossing that ladder, because the ladder was already damaged by the time it was his turn to get on over there. But had he followed Frank, he might have gotten across, and maybe Frank would have been murdered. But he didn't follow Frank. So, so maybe that's one of the underlying messages of this movie. Mark Savloff from the Austin Chronicle wrote, Fallon's obsessive quest to eliminate witnesses comes to seem even more and more like utter madness. But then maybe that's the point. It's hard to tell amidst the layered gunfire and random explosions. I mean, yeah, I think that is the point of the movie. They got somebody who can play a kind of manic, like a manic, psychopathic personality. I think they got the right actor for the job to play that part. And it's not like they had that many explosions. There was a lot of gunfire though. Janet Maslin from the New York Times wrote, a tight, energetic sleeper in an action-adventure genre manages to pack a few anti-machismo sentiments into an otherwise brawny tale. And, there are points in the movie where, men admit that they're scared and admit that they need each other to survive, and admit that, they're not going to go and try to, murder, some bad guys. It's like, they're just trying to get home. So yeah, I get that. And then we have Ed Travis from Synapse. He wrote, Judgment Night isn't so much the 90s classic you want it to be, but rather a nondescript footnote with killer tunes guiding you through. And I don't know. As I said, I was very satisfied with Judgment Night. It's not the best 90s movie, but I found it to be very satisfying. Well, finally, Judgment Night is, as of this recording, available on Prime Video. I want to acknowledge the tragic recent passing of Gene Hackman and his wife. I really enjoyed his performances over the years, and I got the urge to rewatch one of my favorite movies that he starred in, Crimson Tide, with Denzel Washington, on our next episode. You can follow us on Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, Instagram, and sometimes Twitter. Please contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlickcinema.com. Please rate and review on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening on YouTube, then please like or subscribe or leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow by spreading the word about Backlick Cinema, the podcast. Believe me, it matters. I've been Zoe Richardson. Be safe, share a movie from yesteryear with your family, hug your loved ones, and if you're going to be anything, be outstanding.